As the waitress was about to leave, the thug blocked her path. He forced her to sit down and began groping her roughly. Tom pulled out all the cash he had and handed it over to them. The thug ordered another one to attack the waitress. Tom quickly grabbed the hot coffee pot and slammed it hard into Leland's face. He leapt over the counter with swift agility, lunging forward to snatch the thug's gun. The movie opens with Sarah jolting awake, screaming in panic from a nightmare about monsters. As the youngest member of the Stahl family, she is comforted by her father, Tom. He gently reassures her that monsters aren't real, helping her calm down. Just then, Sarah's older brother Jack happily joins the conversation, offering creative ideas on how to deal with the monsters. They may look frightening, but in reality, they can't do much, especially when the lights are on. As soon as their mother Edie joins the spontaneous family gathering early in the morning, the scene further highlights the warm bond of their family. At least for now. Tom Stahl, the owner of a small diner in town, exudes a calm and humble demeanor. He speaks softly, as if afraid to disturb the peace around him. Meanwhile, his wife Edie, a lawyer, creates the perfect balance between Tom's simplicity and her own strength. The atmosphere in their family is wonderful, filled with a sense of peace and love. Tom wasn't just flipping burgers. He once turned the entire Philadelphia underworld upside down. There was a time when he was one of the most dangerous and feared players in the mafia. But the remarkable thing is that no one in this small, peaceful town knows anything about that dark past. Not even his wife, Edie. Tom left behind his criminal life, choosing a simple and honest existence. He buried his past so deeply that even he had almost forgotten it ever existed. But as we all know, the past never truly disappears. The Stahl family seems to be enjoying a happy and harmonious life. Tom and Edie are as affectionate as teenage sweethearts. Meanwhile, their 16-year-old son Jack has a razor-sharp tongue and undeniable confidence. When Edie asks Jack about his upcoming baseball game, he assures her he's going to win. And as always, Tom is the one offering wise and thoughtful advice. Jack even surprised himself during the baseball game. He caught a crucial fly ball, helping his team secure a last-minute victory. His teammates cheered and celebrated, but not everyone was happy with his performance. Bobby Kasier, the notorious bully from another class, felt overshadowed by Jack and was anything but pleased. After the game, his anger boiled over. As the team was leaving, Bobby stormed into the locker room, his eyes filled with challenge, ready to pick a fight with Jack. As a result, Bobby couldn't do anything to Jack and had to walk away in frustration. That evening, Edie surprised Tom by showing up at his diner. She had planned everything perfectly. The kids were occupied, Jack was focused on his studies, and no one could interrupt their special night. She wanted to make up for what they never had the chance to experience, a bit of teenage romance. When they got home, Edie appeared in a cheerleader outfit, a playful smile on her lips. She slowly approached, teasing Tom relentlessly, driving him crazy with both surprise and irresistible attraction. Meanwhile, Jack and his girlfriend Judy were sitting outside chatting. Suddenly, Bobby and his gang showed up. It was clear that Jack had unintentionally provoked Bobby to the point where he had been counting the days, just waiting for a chance to teach him a lesson. But before he could make a move, Bobby was forced to leave. As he drove his truck away, he nearly crashed into another car. At first, he instinctively raised his hand in a friendly gesture, but the moment he saw the cold, menacing expressions of the two strangers inside, he quickly pulled his hand back. They were Billy Orr and Leland Jones, an infamous pair of cold-blooded criminals who left a trail of terror on their cross-country killing spree. They didn't just rob, they murdered anyone who stood in their way, leaving no witnesses behind. Whether adults or children, their strategy was simple yet ruthless. Lurking in small towns, far from big cities where law enforcement was more likely to track them down, and unfortunately this peaceful little town was next on their deadly list. As they drove around town, Billy grumbled, complaining about how sick he was of moving from one dull town to another. But in his mind, that could easily change. The next night, both men showed up at Tom's diner just as it was about to close. Tom calmly told them the kitchen was closed, but Billy and Leland ignored him, brazenly ordering coffee. When Tom repeated his refusal, Leland lost his temper. The remaining customers froze in place, holding their breath. Finally, with reluctance, Tom picked up the coffee pot and poured them a cup. When Tom told the waitress Charlotte that she could go home, she quickly gathered her things to leave, but just as she reached the door, Billy blocked her path. He forced Charlotte into a chair, gripping her tightly, and began touching her in a crude, aggressive manner. Tom, still maintaining his calm demeanor, tried to defuse the situation. Silently, he opened the cash register drawer, took out all the cash inside and placed it on the table in front of them, but instead of appeasing them, this only made them angrier. Leland ordered Billy to attack Charlotte, but before he could act, Tom noticed Leland's moment of distraction. Seizing the opportunity, he quickly grabbed the steaming hot coffee pot and smashed it into Leland's face. With swift agility, he leapt over the counter, lunging for Leland's gun. A fierce struggle broke out. In the chaos, a ladder suddenly struck Tom's leg, sending a sharp jolt of pain through him. Despite the searing pain, Tom fought relentlessly, determined to take down both Billy and Leland. Tom's story quickly made front-page news, with local reports hailing him as a hero. In interviews, his employees stated that if it weren't for him, they might not be standing there today. Although his injuries weren't as severe as everyone had feared, Tom recovered within a few days and was able to walk on his own. As Tom and Edie stepped out of the hospital, they were met with a large, enthusiastic crowd of locals and friends. People gathered around them, cheering, clapping, and praising him, filling the air with warmth and joy. Tom seemed uncomfortable with the attention, avoiding the reporters and giving brief answers to their questions. As the family left the diner and made their way home, Jack couldn't hide his excitement, starting to call Tom a hero. However, Tom humbly brushed it off, insisting it was just luck. A little later, Edie glanced out the window and noticed a car parked across the street. She assumed it was a fan stopping by to admire her famous husband. However, Tom didn't feel that way. He felt suspicious, and his unease grew with each passing moment. The next day, the diner became quite busy. The counter was packed with people, all lined up to enjoy a meal prepared by the local hero. Among the crowd, 3 men in suits stood outside, with the leader being Carl Fogerty. Carl approached the counter and ordered a cup of coffee, but strangely he kept calling Tom Joey. Tom firmly denied it, insisting that he wasn't Joey and that Carl had made a mistake. However, Carl's gaze remained unchanged, and Tom felt the unease grow. Carl was completely convinced that Tom was Joey Cusack from Philadelphia. Their exchange went nowhere. The more Tom denied it, the more Carl insisted on accusing him. Listening to their conversation, Edie began to feel uncomfortable with their threatening attitude. She demanded that they either order something or leave immediately. Carl didn't cause a scene, he simply stood up with a smirk, saying that he knew something about Tom that no one else did. Then, as if he had accomplished his purpose, he turned and walked away. As soon as they left, Edie didn't hesitate and immediately called Sheriff Sam Carney to report the suspicious group. Not long after, the sheriff's patrol car caught up with their black vehicle and blocked it. Sam, with a stern expression, clearly stated that the town valued its peace, and warned them not to cause any trouble. However, Carl ignored all the threats without showing any concern. Sam later visited Tom and Edie after discovering some suspicious facts in his investigation. He found that Carl and his associates were part of an organized crime syndicate from the East Coast, with a long history of murder charges and violent crime. Sam left empty-handed, unable to find any useful information about Joey Cusack, which he had hoped would help solve the case. Instead, Sam discovered a lead on Richie Cusack, a notorious gang boss from Philadelphia. It turned out that Carl and his associates were connected to Richie and his gang. Sam couldn't help but wonder why these dangerous criminals were targeting an ordinary man like Tom. All Tom said was that they had the wrong person. They wanted to see him on TV, and perhaps he reminded that guy Johnny of something. As Sam left, Edie couldn't hold back her emotions and broke down in tears, overwhelmed by the looming danger. Tom did his best to comfort her, hoping to offer some sense of security, however fragile, but deep down he knew they were nowhere near safe. The next morning, Tom noticed the gang's car parked outside his diner. As soon as he realized, the car drove off, leaving Tom in a panic. He feared they were heading toward his home. Without hesitation, Tom immediately called Edie to warn her, telling her to grab the handgun, and he began limping back home from the diner. When Tom barged through the door, panting and sweating, he was stunned to see Edie already ready to pull the trigger. He breathed a sigh of relief when he realized there was no real threat to his family. However, the look in his eyes made everyone at home worry. Later that same day, at school, Jack was enjoying time with his girlfriend when suddenly Bobby and his gang shoved Jack aside. They began bullying Jack, insulting his girlfriend, and mocking him by saying his father was the brave one, while Jack was just a cowardly fool. Though Jack was boiling with anger inside, he didn't respond with his usual sharp remarks. Instead, he just tried to walk away, distancing himself from the group. However, Bobby's gang quickly blocked Jack's path, trapping him. Finally, Jack's restraint snapped. He completely lost control, charging at both of them, and a fight broke out, leaving everyone around stunned. It was clear that Jack had inherited the fiery temper from his father. Later, Edie and her daughter went to the mall to buy shoes. Soon after they arrived, the gang's car pulled up right next to them. While Edie was looking at shoes, she suddenly realized her daughter was no longer by her side. In a panic, she started searching and was shocked to find Carl Fogerty calmly sitting on a chair nearby. Although he wasn't there to cause harm, Carl still tried to make Edie see that Tom wasn't the person he had claimed. Carl told Edie to ask Tom about Richie Cusack, claiming he was Tom's brother, and advised her to ask herself why he was so skilled at killing. Carl also mentioned a personal memory, saying that he would never confuse Joey with anyone else, because it was Joey who had seriously injured him with a piece of barbed wire. Despite this, Ed remained firm in defending Tom, warning Carl to stay away from her family, or he would face the consequences. Carl, though not overly concerned, gently reminded her not to forget her shoes when heading home. Meanwhile, Tom was telling Jack about the fight he had been involved in at school. The two were arguing, and Jack responded with a sarcastic remark. Tom lost control and slapped Jack, causing him to run out of the house. When Edie returned home, she told Tom about the encounter with Fogerty at the mall. She had gone to the courthouse and filed for a restraining order, but Carl's words about Tom still left her confused. At that moment, Tom noticed Carl's car stop outside. He rushed out, holding a handgun in his hand, with Edie right behind him. He demanded that Fogerty leave their house, but Carl insisted that Tom lower the gun and come with them to Philadelphia. When Tom refused Carl's demand, he immediately took Jack hostage. Edie panicked and rushed toward her son, but Tom stopped her in time, reassuring her that he would handle the situation. He gently pushed Edie back upstairs, then set the handgun down to ensure Jack was released safely. When Jack returned inside, Tom firmly stated that he wouldn't go anywhere with them. However, at that moment, one of Fogerty's thugs pointed a gun at him. Tom ruthlessly broke one of the thug's arms, struck him hard in the nose with his palm, then continued to fire 2 shots into the chest of the other thug. Carl shot Tom in the shoulder. Looking through the window, Edie stood frozen, for the first time realizing Tom's terrifying calmness in the face of violence. Carl stood over Tom, pointing his gun at him, asking if he had any last words. Tom coldly replied that he should have killed Carl in Philadelphia, thereby confirming his true identity as Joey Cusack. Carl, pleased to hear Tom's confession, prepared to finish him off. But before he could pull the trigger, a gunshot rang out, and Carl collapsed. The shooter was none other than Jack, who had retrieved his father's handgun. Though clearly still in shock from his own actions, bloodied from head to toe, Joey, now looking like a truly dangerous man, took the gun from Jack's hands and held him tightly. At the hospital, where Tom was gradually recovering, Edie sat beside him, sharing the strange feeling she couldn't shake off. She feared that Carl Fogerty's words might be true. What made her even more doubtful was how easily Tom had taken down the 2 criminals. Tears streamed down her face as Edie pleaded with him to tell her the truth. After Tom confirmed it, she was utterly shattered. Tom, with a pained expression, continued to explain that he had long given up the life of violence, that he had tried to reinvent himself and leave behind the bloody past he had once lived. For Edie, there was no greater pain than the feeling of being deceived by the very man she once trusted and knew so well. She couldn't shake the thought that it might be very difficult for her to trust Tom in the near future. The days passed quietly, until Sheriff Sam Carney showed up to speak with both of them. Sam expressed his doubts about Tom's honesty. He pointed out that those dangerous criminals often operated quietly and would never risk leaving Philadelphia unless they were absolutely certain they were pursuing the right target. As Tom was about to confess everything, Edie entered and interrupted the conversation with Sam. She felt that she didn't have much time left. Sam stood beside Tom, calming any reasonable doubts he had. Edie burst into tears, and finally, Sam left. When the door closed, Edie's gentle expression completely disappeared. Tom, now back to his true nature, changed and displayed Joey's coldness. Edie, unable to take it anymore, slapped him hard across the face, but Joey didn't back down. He pushed her down the stairs and treated her roughly. Edie's back pain had started to radiate, and if this situation continued, she certainly wouldn't be able to endure it for long. That night, Joey was awakened by a phone call, and on the other end was his brother Richie. Richie's words were far from friendly, asking whether Joey would come to meet him or if he'd have to come by himself at dawn. Joey didn't waste any time getting ready. He drove for 16 long hours, heading straight to Philadelphia. When he finally arrived, he walked into the bar Richie had mentioned. Richie had ordered a special beer, and that was the signal for a tough-looking man nearby to immediately recognize him. The man drove Joey to Richie's luxurious mansion. Joey was asked to check his weapons before meeting his brother. Richie greeted Joey as if this were the happiest reunion ever. Then Richie opened up to Joey about the mess he had dragged him into before disappearing. It turned out that Joey had serious personal issues with Carl Fogerty, not only for leaving Carl with a wound to his eye, but also for killing some of Carl's men when Joey escaped from their boss at that time. This reckless act caused Richie to pay a price, and it became a grudge that he had carried with him ever since. Joey wanted to reconcile, but it seemed that his brother wouldn't accept that. Richie wanted Joey dead, and then gestured for the guy behind Tom to take action. The man wrapped a rope around Tom's neck and tried to tighten it, but Joey had already noticed the move. With the strength in his hands, he reacted quickly, struggling to break free. Joey quickly took down the three men, causing Richie to lose his temper. He drew his gun and began shooting, but his target was not worth aiming for. Joey immediately rushed toward the front door, and Richie hastily followed, but Joey managed to slam the door shut and take down the last of the bodyguards inside. Only Richie remained, panicked and desperate, as he hurriedly pulled out the key to lock the door, hoping to protect himself, but it was too late. Joey was right in front of him and finished him off. Joey drove a long distance to return home, arriving just as his family gathered around the dinner table. Although Joey had fractured their relationship, none of them knew what to say. The news about Tom was a shock they never expected. It was hard to accept that the father and husband they had always trusted had such a dark side. However, now that all the danger had passed, there was still a glimmer of hope that that dark side would never emerge again. You could see the light of hope in each of their eyes, especially in Tom and Edie's. And so, that wraps up today's video. I hope you found the summary interesting. Thank you for watching, and see you again soon.